Mike, welcome back to Inside the Truck. First off, we have a little bit of housekeeping to take care
Mhm.
of. We have to congratulate you, my friend. You are only the second ever repeat guest on Inside the Truck, and it only took us 32 episodes to have you back. That's our bad, but congratulations for being a repeat offender, or I guess, or
I
guest, whatever
listen.
you want to call it.
I look the congratulations go your way that you've been around long enough to warrant a recycling of me. That's clearly you've had a nice run here. So yeah, happy to be talking to both of you guys. You know I love you both and working with you and chat with you. So all good, my pleasure.
Recycling.
Yeah. Thanks for taking time out of your extremely busy, hectic hockey schedule. Your life is busy enough with all your NHL commitments. But as we ramp up to World Juniors, we wanted to have you back and just talk about what is, with the exception of maybe arguably Grey Cup, the greatest day in TSN and I would say argue not only hockey broadcasting, but broadcasting tradition in Canada. So, first of all, have you had your chance to get your head around? I know you've done an exhibition game, but have you had your chance had a chance to get your head around the tournament coming up in Minnesota starting Boxing Day?
It sneaks up on you, Chop. You know this so well. Because every year it's basically a new crop of kids, right? Like there might be two, three, four, five returnees, but that means there's 20 new guys every year. And jump into the World Championship, I could do that in my sleep. NHL games, no problem at all. But you have to learn not just the nuts and bolts of their names and where they're from and where they played. But to me, when I do my job, I like to know something about the player, not like, oh, what he did in grade school, but like what he plays like. And I need to see him play to get a feel of what they play like. What does this guy do when he's playing well? What does he look like when he's not playing well? And it takes me about a game and a half to at least get some semblance of an idea. So that's the hard part. Like I did an exhibition game the other night, Canada and Sweden, and I've heard of all the players or most of them, but I haven't seen them my own eyes. So that part is the challenging part, and that's where the first like 4 days of the tournament you're sort of drinking from a fire hose. You're trying to absorb all these different things, remember what you thought and what you felt. So I'll get there. We always do. It always seems daunting and you're not going to be able to, but we'll always get there.
It's funny because as you're talking, I'm thinking of my next question. I'm thinking, oh, does he use a different brain when he's watching this and having to learn at the same time? Because in the NHL, you've probably got most of it learned, but it's a different brain, right?
It's a different process. Like during the game, Steve, like I'm between the benches in the NHL or even if I'm in the booth, I never look at notes. I just watch the game. I make copious amounts of notes. Chop would know this, but I don't ever reference them. I guess making them makes me remember them, but I don't ever look at them. Whereas in these games, like I got my fingers on the lines because I find it easiest to memorize who's playing with who by their lines. And I kind of put trios together and I get recollection that way. And, um, you know, remembering where guys played and what their stats were. It's not all so instinctive like it would be the NHL. So absolutely, I don't know if it's a different part of my brain, but it's definitely like mechanically a different process going through early. But the whole goal is by the time I get 3 days into the tournament, I don't look at my notes anymore. I'm just calling the game. I sort of have a feel for what's going on and it becomes more instinctive. The other part is you absolutely have to remind yourself, and I did it again last night. Every time I go into the junior tournament, because they are so great. These are incredible young athletes, but they're not NHL players. And they're not as good as NHL players. And you have to drop your level of comparison from, oh, I was watching, Connor Bedard and Austin Matthews the night before, and now I'm watching Gavin McKenna and Ivar Stenberg, who might be first and second in the draft, but they're not nearly as good as the third line players last night. And you got to remember that. They are just teenagers and they're not as good. So you got to like lower your expectations or the way you analyze the game, understanding it's not the NHL. They're not as good as the NHL players.
I will say that was Steve. You took and Johnny you segued right out of my question. I was just like, do you have to gear it down at all, right? But you kind of have to do, but you also have to package it up as again, these are the greatest players in the world at the under 20 age. One thing that you don't have to gear down is the embarrassment of riches that TSN puts out for this
Uh,
broadcast, with the exception of Grey Cup. I would say this is the most heavily resourced show on the planet. There's nothing that you guys want for in that, which allows you to execute arguably the best hockey broadcast of the year, really at any level. How does that affect your judgment on that? I know a lot of it will have to do with the producer and the director with what they provide you, but like, do you want all kinds of looks from every different angle? You want guys in ISO? You want to really break it down forensically, or do you just kind of sit back, enjoy all the toys, and let the game unfold and give you the show?
Yeah, you're exactly right, though. It is amazing how like the cameras and the angles. And first off, full credit. Like I like to muck around on the cameras. Like the camera people are incredible. Like they do stuff and following the puck and finding shots that like why would you be doing that? But they just sort of know what to do. And then of course, tape. And like, an NHL game, we might have 4 tapes, maybe not really 5. We got like, row 6, 7 people cutting tapes. There's so much there. But so then it's like almost beyond me. Like, I don't know, like the Exmo reverse RoboCam. Like, I might say the term, but I'm not quite sure what it is, but I know it looks cool. I think what TSN does such a great job of, and I'm a very small part of it, is celebrating the game and celebrating the excellence. Whereas, when I'm calling a game in the NHL, it might be like, celebrate the goal, why it happened. That was a good play, but also like this was the mistake and this is where it broke down. And these are the things that happened that could have prevented it. And maybe instinctively we try to remember that these kids are doing their best they can, celebrate the greatness, as opposed to like maybe point out the shortcomings as quickly. You do. I always do. I can't help it. But maybe that'd be one other element of it. And as far as like how I put the replays together, probably standard issue NHL stuff. Like, you look at the goal, you look at the lead up to the goal, how it kind of developed. But then maybe the second time through, like you get such great, like I think the Connor Bedard where I was spoiled, like my first sort of in-person attended World Junior was Connor Bedard's, what is called that one in Halifax. And how many great super slow-mo, I don't know what the term is, Exmo, of him shooting a puck with his eyes closed. Like it just visually bringing you right into that experience. That's the stuff that all the bells and whistles get you, that take you inside the good and the bad and the joy and the heartache and all of it. And like, that's where the production, producer, director, all those guys feed that to me. Cause it even I get like, that's great. Like I get into it and you kind of feel the game more than just explaining the game.
Yeah, the technology is overwhelming. You're right. I mean, on any goal, you could have easily a 5, 6, 7, 8 look replay sequence, right?
Yeah.
So then it's on the producer and yourself working in tandem in real time to go, okay, we have to break this down. How did this play happen, good and bad?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go from the X's and O's and you end up by the end of it, you're looking at like what we call eye candy, right? It's the pretty pictures on the way out. So,
but sometimes Chop, like in the big moments, if it's a late goal, it's almost like, let's go eye candy first. Like, let's let the euphoria or the disappointment, a heartbreak of the moment, like, let's just let that marinate. Let people just wash over the moment, the feeling. And then like, yeah, I got to explain why that goal went in and whatever. But like in those big moments, like I think overtimes and late games and like, you just want to just feel it as opposed to maybe even understand it.
Yeah, our jobs in broadcast is to put the viewer in the best seat in the house at the event. And if that, like you say, an emotional moment like that, it's just like, you're just soaking it all in, the awe of it, right? Okay, let me ask you this. How much emphasis, if you can break it down like out of 100%, like how much emphasis do you put on Canada only? Is it 75%, 25% the opponent? Does it depend on who's playing for the other team? How much of a Canadianized show are you doing each night?
Well, I mean, I think the focus is probably 60 to 70% Canada. And that means, and depends on their opponent. The American team has great stars, or Swedish team might have great stars, and you focus on them as well. But that doesn't mean like I'm cheerleading for Canada. It just means I'm explaining largely what's happening with Canada more than I am with Sweden. So if Canada is not playing well, you sort of explain why that's happening while, celebrating Sweden for what they're doing right. Yeah, it's kind of like 2/3, 1/3, something like that, where, focus on the Canadian team, the Canadian athletes, their stories, and what's going on in relation to their team. But not get so caught up for it. Like, it's a competition. There's other teams playing. And when those teams do something well, I'm not going to ignore it. I wouldn't want to. I would feel foolish to do so. But it's a Canadian show about Canadian players and a Canadian team. And what we're lucky with, Chop, is generally speaking, they give you something good to work with. Like year after year, you think, it's going to be different. Maybe you'll be flat. It won't feel the same. But there's always something to latch onto. But yeah, it's a Canadian-centric broadcast we do for TSN, but not necessarily a pro-Canadian team broadcast.
I would say this is right up there with the Olympics and the Four Nations, which we just experienced last winter. Not so much television, but does Canada take it too hard when we lose, and do we get too euphoric when we win? Like, is this overblown in our Canadian minds, this tournament?
Yeah, well, Steve, I think Canada likes stuff we're good at. Whatever it is, like if it's on a global stage and we got a great singer, a great actor, a great hurler, whatever, like we really lean into what we're good at because we don't have maybe the volume that some of the bigger countries have. I do think so, and it's hockey, right? And so when Russia was in the tournament, like there's a lot of different elements that go to why Canada celebrates this so much. So I don't necessarily feel bad about the upside of like really getting behind a team or the athletes and, maybe sticking your chest out, feeling good that Canada does well. Where it can get strong is when they don't do well. And whether they just don't play well, or sometimes it's a bad break. Was 2 years ago, I think a puck went in off Oliver Bonk's skate and ended their tournament with a couple minutes left. I play with Oliver's dad, Radek, and Oliver has been through some stuff with people he knows and mental health and the bombardment of stuff that he would hear and through social media that people think it's okay to say that to a 19-year-old who had a tough break in an athletic competition. Yeah, totally over the top, inappropriate, not right, and not any sort of perspective on the importance of this tournament. But I think that, the upside, yes, the downside can be a bit much when clearly they're doing their best, whatever country we're talking about. And if it doesn't go well, if you're Canada, nobody's more disappointed than the players. No one wants it better than them. And so in that sense, you got to pump the brakes a little bit on how much criticism you offer up.
And that's where it's borderline cruel, because you said 19 years old, and earlier you mentioned these guys aren't NHL players, but I think that gets lost in the wash sometimes.
Well, and we're part of that because we build them up. They become superhuman. They become adults. They become celebrities. They become, big, larger than life players. When I have daughters that are 21 and 19. Like I can't imagine them, and my daughters are relatively well, organized young women, but like dealing with the pressure and then the fallout of when things don't go well. Like it's a lot. It's a lot that these kids are going through. And yes, the rewards are great and they're going to be great going forward, but they're not there yet. These kids are barely out of high school. So yeah, it's a good reminder of everyone when you just sort of enjoy the tournament, but not take it to that level of personal affront if it doesn't go the way you want as a viewer.
Yeah, we talk about the pressure put on by, on social media, people watching, et cetera, but nobody puts as much pressure on themselves as the kids do. I'll never forget coming back from 2002 World Juniors in Finland. They lost in the gold medal game when Steve Ott threw the puck over the glass, and it was the first time they had kind of been this as a delay of game penalty. And so they lost to Russia in that gold medal game. And I'll never forget at the airport going home, we were all on the same flight. The kids all had their medals folded up in their pockets. And Stan Butler, the head coach, went around to every kid at the gate and said, "Get your medal out, put it on, wear it proudly." And there, up until then, there was like this thought of like, you win a gold, you lose a silver or a bronze, right? No,
Right.
Never forget that. And all the kids, to a man, pulled them all out, put them on, wore them. And when, they come through the doors at Pearson and everybody's there and the media and all that, and they're welcoming them home, they all proudly were displaying their silver medals. And I thought, good on Stan for that. Those boys, they worked their butts off and they deserved every second and every ounce of that silver medal.
Doesn't feel that way in the moment, though. And I get it.
No.
As an athlete and as a Canadian athlete with hockey, that's not sort of how you're wired. It's we win gold or we have failed. That's sort of a normal experience. But I think it was Elias Anderson, too, the Swedish player who threw his silver into the stands. Like he chucked it or gave it to a family member or something. He was heavily criticized. I'm like, again, they are just kids. Or the way the bronze medal winner celebrates wildly, and then the silver medal team that wins a silver medal, they're devastated, even though they did better than the team celebrating. It's all the psychology behind it. It's all very normal. But yeah, I mean, if you were to ask a team, if you were to ask the Americans or the Swedes or the Czechs or Canada or Finland, if they lose the gold medal game, they will not be happy. And I get it as an athlete. I get that.
So you just named all those other teams that, sake of argument, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, weren't really part of the championship swirl at the World Junior, but now they kind of are. How has that tournament morphed over the years? Like USA and to me in Canada are just kind of right there.
Well, I mean, I think it's really the US has changed like the entire paradigm of hockey. That they have so many great players. That US development program that they started, whatever it was, 20 years ago, has done exactly what it set out to do: churn out great American talent. Yes, it's top heavy. Like they take the best 30 kids in the country and put them on the same team and have them compete, but they turn out great players, star players. So, the last 2 years, the Americans have won. Canada didn't even get to the final, but you went into those tournaments saying the Americans are clearly the best team and they should win. Not they can win, but they should win. And that's new-ish, like not new the last 2 years, but in 1999, that wasn't the case. Like that sort of was a mid-2000s development. And then, Sweden's always been around it. Occasionally they have a group of great players that, really push the limits. And then Russia, it's almost gone the other way. Now they're not in the tournament anymore for the last few years, but even prior to that, they used to also have these great teams that would stare down Canada and they'd be like, yeah, we're every bit as Canada, every bit as good as Canada. That's not necessarily been the case either. They have great players and great moments and great talents, but they haven't had the depth of players that Canada and the US can churn out. And that's why, whether you're talking about the Olympics, Canada and the US are clearly ahead of everybody else. At the World Juniors, Canada, the US, clearly ahead of everyone else. And it's really been the growth of the Americans that has changed everything. And what is fascinating, because I kind of was in the NHL when there was still the sense, I think, even though the US won, the 96 World Cup, I was in college then, that Canada was always better. Canada would always win. Like when push comes to shove, Canada just figures it out. And the group of American players that are going to play in Milan, the ones who play next week in Minnesota, they don't think that anymore. The fact that the American players have zero fear, zero intimidation, zero sort of scar tissue of Canada being, the unbeatable team in the big moments, that's great for hockey. I mean, that's not great for Canada results all the time, but that's great for hockey. And that has definitely changed the last 15 years, let's say.
We make no bones about the fact that this is a TSN IIHF partnership, the rights to these broadcasts. So therefore TSN and you and the front bench and everybody else that's involved. I know that back on my run from 99 to 2014, that was a very tight connection. And basically, I wouldn't say the broadcasts were shills for Hockey Canada, but it was, heavily, heavily influenced. Has that changed at all? I haven't been around the tournament like on site since 2015. How is that relationship, and does that affect you at all in the booth?
I'd say almost above my pay grade shop, right? Like I don't that doesn't come down to touch me. We know Hockey Canada has been through some significant changes and maybe some important ones, probably still going on there. And I think that TSN is mindful of being appropriate with what's going on in the world. And you want to celebrate Canadian young hockey players. You want to celebrate Hockey Canada and all the good it can do without being, ignorant to the fact that there is stuff else happening around. But again, like that was always, Paul Graham, who's just recently retired, who was our boss at TSN and ran the live events. He's not there anymore. He just stepped down. So Arden, our new boss, is wonderful and brilliant and an amazing lady. She's kind of going through it. But, there might be Hockey Canada ads, but I've never chopped. I'm a little bit different because I went to college, right? I didn't play junior. And so this, the Canadian college, the college versus the CHL was always a bit of a sensitive topic for, Hockey Canada because, their premier development path is through the CHL. So I was always like kind of cognizant of that, not being overly bullish on college relative to the CHL. But now that's out the window too, because there's like 7 college players, all the best players, whether it's Verhoff or McKenna or Hage or whoever, they're all playing down in college anyway. So that's also out the window. Yeah, so that partnership is super important. TSN, IIHF, we have the World Championship, we have the women's stuff. But it doesn't really get to me. Yeah, that's sort of production side. But I do think it has evolved over the last 10 years, maybe since you've been gone.
Yeah, I mean the one moment that comes to my mind is the World Juniors in 2006. I want to say it was in Vancouver. Canada was playing Russia. It was a medal round game,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a goal scored by Evgeny Malkin that was in and out around the padding very quickly. And we'll just leave it at the last look
Mm-hmm.
was the net cam, which was after they started playing again.
See,
So I'll just leave it. I'll just leave it at
yeah,
that.
I would be weirded out. Like I think as much as I love Canada, and I do, like the principled person in me, like we're like we can't do that. We have to show that. So
Yeah, and we
you're
did.
listening.
We did. We
Yeah,
just made sure they dropped the
just
puck and
after
kept
the puck
playing.
was dropped.
Yeah.
Yeah. My
So I
parents
think
were at that. That's how big
yeah.
this tournament is. Like I was in the
Uh,
NHL. I was 31 years old, 32 years old. My parents at Christmas, they're not coming to see me in Arizona. They went to Vancouver
yeah,
to go watch the World Juniors
that's awesome.
as guest of Ed Chinalis. So yeah, it was it's a Canadian thing. Like if you're involved in hockey at all, this
Yeah.
tournament, like I was never a contender to play on it. But when I was in high school, when I was at university, my parents used to bring me VCR tapes. Kids, Google it if you want to see what that is. Like a DVD of the games where I would watch in university. We would kind of watch them back. So it's sort of a holiday season staple, no matter whether how close you are involved in the team. If you're Canadian, you like hockey, you can't help but sort of get swept up in it.
Yeah, well, we talk about the music. The Canadian international hockey music is really the official Christmas music of Canada, right? When you hear that,
Yeah. You hear
when
the
you hear the big,
background? You're like,
yeah.
oh, that time of year.
Yeah, it's Christmas
Exactly.
music. Okay, I want to switch gears and move to your partner in the booth, Gord Miller,
Sure.
who's been the voice of this tournament for decades.
30, I asked him yesterday. I
Yeah.
think he said 33rd year doing the tournament, and he might have done 7 or 8 or 9 years hosting it as like studio host, and then 20 odd. Like it's
Yeah.
just he is
Wow.
the voice. Here's my Gord Miller story, real quick. We were in Edmonton, my first tournament as the lead analyst. It was like the summer Edmonton tournament. It was post COVID. It was just kind of trickling out.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
And Brennan Hoffman, he's the young Ranger draft pick, whose uncle played with me somehow in junior. We saw him and his family in the street, and Brennan's parents and Brennan came up and said, "Mike, hey," gave me the phone, said, "Can you take a picture of us with Gord?" I'm like, "Oh God, here we go." But and then they did it, and they said thanks, and I think Brennan had scored the game before, and Brennan said, "One of my goals in life was to have you call a goal of mine in this tournament." I'm
Wow.
like, that is, I mean, Gord, you're old, but also
Yeah.
that's beautiful, right? Like that's what he is to young hockey players when it comes to this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's IHF royalty, right? In 2013, he was acknowledged for his contributions to international ice hockey and, at a ceremony over in Europe. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's face it, in those 30 years, he's forgotten more about this tournament than most people will ever know or
It's
live or have a
unbelievable.
chance to witness, right? So, given that, how does the conversational storytelling kind of flow work between you and him in the booth? Because he does a great job of being able to shift gears from, letting the viewer know exactly who he needs to know, what he needs to know in that moment. But he's also got one hell of a mind full of
Yeah,
stories from the tournament.
there's a reason why he's the best. Like he's unreal at this, and it makes my job so much easier. So I want to pump him up too much because I got to work with him the next 2 weeks. But like it's like the storytelling and the historical context to this tournament and moments and his memory. Like honestly, I've done 4 of these. I'm like, I don't really who beat who in what tournament. He remembers. Oh yeah, Ostrava in '96. I got it. This. I'm like, how?
And
How?
you want to call him on it and say, "There's
Yes.
no way you're
There's no way
bullshitting. You're
that's right.
totally lying." But then you Google it, and it's like, damn,
Yeah.
he's right.
So he's obviously he's a master at calling the game straight up. We see at the NHL, like he does that flawlessly. But he's so good at sort of weaving in stories about the kids and their parents and their journey, and along with me. But and then the historical idea as well that he never forgets to kind of bring it back. So yeah, he makes my job easier because he knows everything about everyone that's playing in this tournament, but also like literally for 25 years he knows everything about everyone who played in the tournament. And I can't, my mind can't absorb that much stuff. So he carries a lot of that weight, but he does it so effortlessly. And we get games where it's Canada Denmark, maybe this year, and maybe that game's going to be 9-1 in the second period, and so you have time to flesh some of those things out, and that's where he just I could just leave, he would just do it on his own because he's so good at it. But I think that's he adds to like the context and like the flavor of the whole experience is his voice, his experience, calling the games, and then his ability to relay that to the viewers. It's outrageous how he does it year after year after year. I got to learn 20 new players. He's got to learn 20 new players, stories, parents, and then tie them all into like the last 3 decades.
Well, he truly does eat, sleep, and breathe it. That's for sure. And I saw that being with him for 16 years on that tour. So this is truly a tournament of moments, Johnny, as evidenced yearly by the Sports Center's top 10, right? There's always a few or a handful or a couple from the tournament. Some that come to mind for my run of the 16 years was like Marc-Andre Fleury's own goal against USA and Finland, the Carey Price semifinal shootout versus USA and Sweden, and then of course the Jordan Eberle goal versus Russia in Ottawa. What are some of your? This is your fifth, I think. So what are you must have 2 or 3 that come to your mind like that.
So I was totally spoiled, right? My first lead analyst one, I was in Edmonton, even though it was a weird one without the full stands. That was the Mason McTavish pull it off the goal line in the air.
Yeah.
Like I know Ken Johnson scored the game winner like 2 minutes later, but the fact that this puck was going in and he pulled it out of the air, like who does that in that moment? It was, a fraction of an inch from being over and double swiped. It didn't anyway. So like I think about that and the likelihood of him doing that again, the poise and sort of wherewithal to pull it off in the moment. So that stands out for sure. And then my second year was the Bedard tournament. And, I think Bedard's performance went a long way to sort of, getting this tournament back on a good path. And I just think about, I guess it was the quarterfinal goal in overtime when he deked out the entire team. And he went through like 4 guys while setting records left and right. And just the way that building, like we've all been fortunate to be in a lot of neat places, right? Watch great games, work in great games. And, when the games are that good, you can feel the moment. But of all the games I've been to in my life, I've been to Stanley Cup finals, I was at the Four Nations. Like, of all the games, I don't know if I've ever had a visceral reaction to a goal that like oozed out of my body like I did for him on that, like just hair on that edge and goosebumps everywhere. And I didn't say anything for probably 30 seconds, but I was like freaking out. I was like out of my mind that he pulled this off. So that whole Bedard tournament, but that one overtime goal specifically, that one to me stands out as like the single greatest thing I've ever seen, for sure. So, and then they're both Canadian. The last 2 years, Canada's lost early, but other great moments. But those two stand out as sort of singular events where I was wowed and will never forget what it was like.
I know you've got about a week and a half before this starts, so I don't know how deep you've dug. What do you see happening in this turn? Yeah. What do you see happening in this year's tournament? Any team you think might surprise you? Anything like that?
So what's interesting is, this tournament is sort of seeded based on last year's finish, right? So for starters, Canada, because they finished 5th, they start off, they get a crappy dressing room. Like they were kind of talking about it in Minnesota. They were in like the 3rd dressing room of their side, which is like the practice rink 200 yards away, which usually they would get the University of Minnesota's home team because they're the first seed. So, little things like that. But the one country I would say watch out for, I think obviously Canada should be good. They're probably the favorite. USA second, Sweden third. Czechia is a different kind of country because they were the best team in the world 25 years ago, right? Turn of the century, 98 Olympics, 99 World Championships, whatever. And then they went on a real downward trend where they were not what they were then. they're sort of back. Like I think they are not just, oh, could they upset a team? They could upset the tournament. Like they could win the tournament. I think they have 17 skaters who play in the CHL. Talk about a CHL promo, but like a whole bunch of Czech guys play in the CHL. They're top guys. And so that's Canada's first game, Boxing Day. The team that's knocked them out 2 years in a row in the in the quarterfinals, and it's not some sort of layup cupcake game. I think Czechia would be the one team that you'd be like, I didn't know they're that good. They might be that good.
And if I'm not mistaken, they've put the dagger into Canada in both 25 and 24, right? So,
yeah.
So if it ends up getting that far down the road, there's that. Don't think that won't be in the back of the Canadians' minds, right?
Yeah, they might not be on the team, but they know the history.
Yeah,
they
no,
know it
100%.
well.
Yeah. Okay. We're running out of time. We got to let you go because you've been extremely generous. But last year in Ottawa, TSN produced over 80 hours. I want to say probably closer to 90 hours of coverage. So it is truly an international hockey telethon. What other than doing the games, what other side stuff does TSN have you doing around that, or do they just let you focus on doing the games?
Yeah, largely doing the games. I mean, I think the way they do it now, Chop, is they stagger the games, right? So there's basically 10 hours straight of games. Like it's a noon, 2:35, 8 kind of thing, where it's just one after another. That makes long days for Duffy, Jimmy on the set. This is going to be our first year without Bob McKenzie, which is going to be very different. The Bob father, who is, as synonymous with this tournament as Gord, really. He's the studio version of Gord. He's not there. So it's going to be Frankie Corrado, who's a really talented younger broadcaster, Cheryl Pounder and Jeff O'Neill and James. But I don't have to do too much else. We focus on the games. We call every game, though. We call every game in our pool, and then they call every game on the other side as well. There might be some studio contributions. I think, we always find a way to. I think the Olympic team is getting announced while we're out there, right around New Year's.
So right on New Year's Eve. So
we have to do a show related to the Olympic team, which will be a lot of fun. But largely, I think they are sympathetic to our schedule and to my voice. And I don't get how Gord again does this, because his job, he talks 70% of the game. I might talk 30. And honestly, it's like my third night in a row to the bar after 2 days. I'm like, feeling a little hoarse, a little gravelly. So I think, and I try to be very mindful of not even really talking. I don't go out ever at the World Juniors. I basically just, sleep, herbal teas, and work when I work. But so not too much else for me. There is a ton of studio support. It is a massive undertaking that people on site in Minnesota, back home in Toronto as well, that put this together. But we just basically have to worry about the games, which is enough.
Yeah, no, exactly. We joked on site during towards the end of my run. It was like doing the Olympics. You'd go to the rink at 8 o'clock in the morning. You'd be there till 11 o'clock.
Yeah, from the truck.
Right? But yeah.
And you're hopeful you can sneak 30 minutes to get a bite and get a breath of fresh air when you get immediately got to turn the page. But they're also mixed in, Chopper. You could appreciate this in the truck. They mix in younger producers occasionally, and depending on the game, if it's maybe not a high profile game, not a Canada game, obviously, but to get, as you call them, the front row guys, a game off so they can take a breath or sleep in or whatever it might be, and get some other people experience. I would imagine doing your guys' job at this tournament is unlike anything else. There's just so much going on, which is both great but also daunting. So they do work in other younger producers, directors, TDs to try to get them a little bit of experience of something of this magnitude.
Kids today, Johnny, they're getting soft. I'm telling you right now, huh?
They're killing me.
Back in my day, Johnny, we walked to the rink in bare feet through snowbanks, and we'd sit there and do 6 games, and then we'd do the post-game shows. And man, kids, get off my lawn. All right,
Grandpa.
All right, Johnny, we're gonna end it on that note. Hey, Johnny, thank you so much for joining us. This is a great warm up for our listeners. If you haven't watched the tournament, be sure to tune it in. It's unbelievable. It's the best hockey you'll see over the Christmas break, and I'm including the NHL. So, and as always, Johnny, I know you'll hit a home run as you always do. Say hi to Gord for me, and wish the boys good luck in Minnesota. I will definitely be watching. First, I have to get the NHL Network package here in Utah, but I definitely will get that, and I will be watching.
Yeah, listen, I think it's NHL Network carries every game as well, so it should be available to you. Great to talk to you both. Always love catching up with both of you guys. And happy holidays to you guys and your families. Hope you have a good time. And we'll do it again. Maybe I'll be the first ever 3-time attendee of your pod.
Sounds good to me.
I think there's a good chance of that, Johnny.
Sounds good to me. Yeah,
Merry
happy
Christmas.
holidays, Johnny.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Okay, I can end it if you want, Paul.
Yeah,
Thanks,
that was
Mike.
perfect.
That was
Thanks,
great.
Johnny.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah,
We're gonna-
listen, my pleasure. We could talk for hours. I don't
Dude,
know.
you're